Hello and welcome to the Health Chat. Today, Rick and I are diving into an amazing podcast. It's something that's been our passion, and it's an incredibly amazing topic because we're discussing cellular detoxification and how that overlaps with longevity. And we're going to specifically be talking about cellular senescence. This will be a two-part series because there is so much to talk about, and it's going to get a tiny bit technical because it's really hard not to. And there may be a little bit of biochem lesson in here, but I promise it'll be worth it because when you understand the biochemistry, when you understand how it works at a cellular level, you'll be more inclined to want to continue with the process, not just for a certain amount of time, but probably for the entirety of your life. And the catalyst for this podcast was a journal that Rick found. Do you remember that day, Rick, when you rang me about this?
Yeah, so I was traveling to London and I thought I was going to just grab a novel, but I came across this New Scientist Essential Guide number 18 on aging and how to live a long and healthy life. And I realized how far the research has come in the last couple of years. And it really brought me up to speed reading this. And then we thought we had to do a podcast, and then it turned into two, and now it's turning into 3 parts. But it's well worth it. And I think that we've got lots of good tips on cellular aging in this one to come.
But firstly, a little biochem to help kick things off. And because we're talking about cellular detoxification, let's start there first. Now, our cells are made up of a cell wall, which is a lipid bilayer, predominantly phospholipids, cholesterols, and proteins. And these guys provide structure, integrity, stability, but more specifically, they selectively allow nutrients and waste to flow in and out of the cell. And without a healthy cell wall, this transfer of nutrients and toxins can't take place effectively. And internally, our cells are made up of organelles, but more specifically, we're going to talk about the nucleus and the mitochondria. The nucleus stores our DNA, and the DNA contains the instructions needed for us to survive, reproduce. Basically, it gives us our physical characteristics. It's our genetic inherited code. And they dictate how our cells behave. They replicate and they divide, and we'll get to that shortly. And the other part is the mitochondria. They're responsible for creating ATP, or energy. They absorb the nutrients we eat, and through enzymatic reactions, ATP is created. And that's what gives us our spark. If we don't have ATP creation, we feel tired. And so the people that you can think of in this space, the ones that are depleted of energy, are people who have got chronic fatigue or suffer fibromyalgia. These people suffer from low amounts of ATP production, in particular phosphate stores that are required to create ATP. And in fact, several studies have found certain nutrients for ATP production are required. And so people who are deficient in these usually suffer from that type of fatigue.
And a few of these supplements that are going to help with ATP production are coenzyme Q10. Now, if you're a little bit older, you might need a 150 milligram dose or even up to 300 milligrams per day. If you're younger, around the 100 milligram per day should do it. I've got this Herbs of Gold coenzyme Q10, which I think is a pretty solid formula. The other things that we have in our arsenal are creatine. Now, creatine, this is a Protein Works creatine. And creatine you might associate with just sports medicine because people use it often for energy. Well, it also helps with ATP production, and it's going to help you with energy outside of sports. It's not just a bodybuilder product. It's one that can be used for all of us to help us fight fatigue and to, as I said, to promote ATP. And another of the aminos that you might like to incorporate is carnitine. Now, carnitine is also known for its fat-burning properties. It's also used a lot in the sports industry because of that and in the weight management sphere. I've got a Protein Works one here that's available in retail, health food stores, pharmacies, etc. But if you put together, creatine, you put together the coenzyme Q10, the carnitine, and another one you might like to consider is also D-ribose. Now, we have that in our practitioner-only range. And if you want to look into incorporating some D-ribose, you might need to see a healthcare practitioner or get your pharmacist to prescribe it for you.
Yeah, and there's also niacinamide. That's also something that has been found to help. But D-ribose, there's a lot of literature surrounding D-ribose and its effectiveness in increasing ATP production. Remember, I was talking about our cells and how they replicate. Our cells are programmed to replicate for a finite amount of time before they die. And it's something between 40 to 60 times. And this is actually programmed into our DNA. And it's known as the Hayflick phenomenon. It's the number of times a normal cell divides before it dies. And this death, which is programmed, is called apoptosis. It is a normal process. We like this to happen because what it's doing is it's alerting the body, hey, I'm no longer any good. Come and take me away. And specific phagocytic immune cells come along. They remove the debris, deconstruct elements of that cell that can be recycled, and then it eliminates what it no longer needs. And that elimination is what we're going to touch on in a particular phase of detoxification, okay? This replication process we're going to dive into a little bit deeper, because the way it works is on the end of our DNA, we have something called telomeres, and they play a crucial role in maintaining the stability and integrity of our genome. They prevent the ends of the chromosomes from fraying. So think of them like shoelace ends, and you've got those plastic caps on the ends. Well, they prevent the fraying of the DNA, just like those plastic caps prevent the fraying of the shoelace. And during cell division, the DNA replication doesn't copy the very ends of the chromosomes. And as a result, with every cell division, the telomeres naturally shorten. And the age of that DNA replication is determined by those telomeres. So if your telomeres are short, then the replication process is shorter. The longer the telomeres, the longer the process, or the more times it can replicate.
So, Vicky, you know, when you talk about telomere health, one of the key supplements we have in our arsenal is resveratrol. I have this Herbs of Gold product here. It's got trans resveratrol, which is the type that you want, together with some amino acids and some zinc to support that telomere health and the overall cellular health. Resveratrol is very big in this space. It's been around since, I think, the 90s, but the research out there is pretty solid on keeping the telomere longer and helping us with a healthier and longer lifespan.
That is absolutely key. When these telomeres become too short, they enter a state of cellular senescence. They don't have the ability to trigger that normal apoptosis or cell death. What they do is they enter a state of being neither dead nor alive. And that's what senescence is. It's like, I'm a zombie cell. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to secrete these proteins. And they're called SAS proteins, which is senescence associated secreted proteins. I know that's a real mouthful, but basically they're proteins that are made up of cytokines, chemokines, and proteins that influence cancer behavior. And the accumulation of these senescent cells in tissues over time is what is thought to contribute to the aging process and age-related diseases. And it's very specific that I state age-related diseases. So think cardiovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases, cancers, arthritis, osteoporosis, kidney diseases. And these pro-inflammatory molecules accumulate in our tissue, and that's what causes severe problems. And so when Rick was talking about resveratrol, what resveratrol is doing is keeping the length of our telomeres long, or delaying the shortening of the telomeres. But there are other things that do impact telomere length in a negative way.
And these things are, you know, things that you do have some control over without needing supplementation. So we look at your diet. Do you have poor quality foods? Are your foods covered in pesticides? Are you eating a whole food diet? Do you have many plant-based foods to keep your fiber intake up? This is very, very important, although very basic, and we covered a lot of it in the first part of our podcast on this cellular cleansing, cellular detox, cellular aging last month. But other things you want to look at as well is your stress levels. What are they like? What are your sleep levels like? Think about things like theanine and magnesium to help you there. We talk about those many, many times. But you want to also make sure that you're keeping your antioxidants up. So looking at maybe adding some spices into your cooking as well, keeping up your juices, keeping up your water intake, which is so important for phase one of the detox that we'll talk about in a second. Another thing to look at is excessive exposure to UV radiation, which can promote senescence. When you also take a look at your lifestyle, you can't forget those environmental polluters. And again, that was in last month's podcast where we looked at what you're putting on your skin, what you're using in the shower, what chemicals you have in your house. Although these do sound very basic, without getting all these ducks lined up in a row, you kind of miss the point of the next phases that we're going to talk about in cellular cleansing. So look at all that, see what you can do. Look at what you can do with your exposure to blue light, radiation late at night, etc. go back to that first podcast and have a listen, because that'll set you up for what's coming next.
And so hopefully now you can appreciate why cellular detoxification process is paramount and how it overlaps with telomere length, DNA quality, mitochondrial function, and therefore just general health and well-being, because we are working at that cellular level. We're not just clearing out the bad senescent cells and therefore all the cytokines and chemokines. What we're doing is we're regenerating and refueling our active good cells, and that's what's going to help with longevity and general health and well-being. At this point, I think now we can talk about cellular detoxification, and we're going to discuss the nutrients that we have readily available to us that help to increase the telomere length, scavenge the senescent cells, and improve DNA quality. There are 3 phases to cellular detoxification. And the first phase is crucial because it's all about elimination pathways, and it's called the prep phase.
So this prep phase is all about reigniting the cells as well as promoting good elimination, good gut function, good liver function, good kidney function. So we have to start off just with fiber. We talked about that a lot also in previous podcasts. There's also your methylated Bs. So I have MTHFR. They have a good range of methylated Bs that you can choose from. Many of us, if methylation isn't working, we can't get to the proper elimination phase of the detox that we want. Then also there's the aminos. Now, health-wise, do an array of amino acids that are useful for a variety of conditions. But in this case, I'm looking at glycine. I'm also looking at methionine and also taurine. They're going to help you get the cells ready for elimination and also, as I said, help you to reignite the spark inside the cell. Let's also take a moment in the prep phase to talk about the importance of good quality water. Make sure that it's filtered. Make sure you're getting 1.5 to 2 litres per day. Make sure that during the day you're not feeling overly thirsty, because you've got to help the body in this elimination by making sure there's enough fluid. We also have to start thinking about the lymphatic system and its role to play. So you might like to incorporate some high intensity interval training, some skipping, some trampolining, and coming back to those spices as well.
Continuing from the prep phase is a body phase, and that targets deeper tissues and clears the impurities from high concentrations to lower concentrations. So think about those SAS proteins that were circulating in the exoplasm. Think about any other toxins that are lurking around. That's what this phase is about. But we're still working on the liver in this phase, and we want to support our body with good quality fats, activated Bs, CoQ10, glutathione, and antioxidants. And they're the stuff that Rick spoke about before. And that leads on to the final phase, which is the brain phase. And we're nourishing the brain and the nerve tissues with fat-soluble nutritionals like your omega-3s and 6s, your B vitamins, alpha-lipoic acid, carnitine, choline even, and resveratrol. And resveratrol has been very heavily studied in this space, and it's specifically trans resveratrol, so not just any resveratrol, and it's found in Japanese knotweed in very high concentrations. It's been shown to have preventative impact on neurodegenerative illnesses and inflammatory damage because it does have the capacity to cross the blood-brain barrier, and there is quite a lot of buzz about resveratrol at the moment.
There is indeed. And sorry to keep harping on about last month's podcast, but we talked a lot about the super greens. We talked also about the super reds. I think they're important when you're talking about each phase of this cellular detox. Keeping up the greens, especially chlorella, is something that might help. We've also touched on previously about those botanicals that may assist liver function, like St. Mary's thistle and dandelion, many available in retail stores easily. I would say if you're going to find a supplement that has a total detox package in it, that you start off gently, and we've said that many times also. To help support the brain phase, you might like to consider health-wise choline. We also have some good omegas. I've chosen the vegan omegas, so we have green nutritionals. They do both a liquid and a capsule form of the algal variety of omega-3, and also free spirit. They also do a liquid and a capsule form of vegan omega. Now, these have good EPA, DHA ratios.
Underpinning cellular detoxification are 5 principles. First one is removing the toxins, which Rick explained really well in a previous episode. We want to regenerate that cell membrane that we spoke about earlier, about allowing nutrients to be able to flow into the cell and toxins to leave the cell. We want to restore cellular energy and making sure we get that ATP production firing from our mitochondria. We want to reduce cellular inflammation, which is all about removing the senescent cell proteins, those SAS proteins from the exoplasm. And we want to reestablish methylation, which in itself is its own protocol.
Of course, we also have a shortcut in that we have an array of products that have total formulas that support each of these phases. And with the wonders of technology, Vicky's going to show you these on the screen as I'm speaking. Well, I certainly hope that worked anyway. And Vicky, I also want to mention that in the Essential Guide to Aging, although there was a lot of science, there's also a lot of common sense, and that is keeping a positive mood up. This is where you might like to look into our flower essence ranges. You might like to look into Bart flowers, our efficacious ranges, our Australian bush flower remedies, things like aromatherapy to help you to relax, things that are going to help with your mood, amino acids like theanine, for example. And also going back to things very simply like our magnesium bath salts and taking a bath and relaxing. If you're happier and more relaxed, this goes a long way towards supporting cellular health. And I think that whilst we talk a lot about the science, we also need to acknowledge that and to make sure that we take that time using the support that we have to relax and chill out as best we can in a bit of a crazy world at times. And, you know, I the other day was lucky enough to see a practitioner here in Western Australia, and she showed me or let me experience something called the brain tap, where you use headphones and it's giving music and sound, and you close your eyes, but you wear sort of goggles. And that was a really lovely experience also whilst being on a magnetic bed. We forget about those, and also things like the infrared saunas. They're a big role in the ice baths and et cetera, that we can add these things in. You don't have to do them all, but add them in. And what I want to touch on just to end with is also the power of music to soothe you and calm you and make you happy, because happiness is such an important thing for overall health as well as cellular health.
So the question now becomes, how long do you need to do this detoxification for? And really that's dependent on the person, but I would suggest at least 1 month in all those phases, and that'll prep your body for gearing up, regenerating, and using your good cells to help with the next part of this, which is what we'll talk about next month. But the key takeaways here are cellular detoxification, improving your waste elimination channels, helping your cells create energy, and improving the brain and nerve function. And this then leads to improving telomere length and sometimes reversing the damage that has been done for optimal DNA quality. It helps with improving autophagy and the body's response to senescent cells that helps reduce the risk of age-related diseases. Now, this space is still evolving. We have so many strategies based on current scientific knowledge, and next month we'll explore what sirtuins are, how they impact our health, and we'll even go into the mimetics of pharmaceuticals that are responsible for inducing autophagy, which I know is one of Rick's favorite subjects. And we're going to talk about how to improve energy and metabolism and reduce inflammation and so much more. Rick, I can't wait for next month's episode.
Well, me either, because we have got so many supplements to help you with senescence and autophagy. It really is like it's a peak of the podcasts coming your way next month.
Thanks so much for listening, everyone. Until next time.